Reptile world really came to fruition. So I got my degree in wildlife management. Hunting and fishing was always my outdoors, my background. If anyone really knows me, they know what I'm known for, but it all stems from turtles.
Howdy folks, Brian Kusko here at Redline Report, and we are going to sit down with my buddy Ed Kamara, who is actually a new employee of Redline Shipping. But we had one of the most amazing conversations yesterday, and he's very intentional with his words. So I wanted to have him on, and he was actually the first person I reached out to do an interview here because I don't actually know why that happened, but he was. And I just wanted to have him on and hear what he has to say. So let's hear out Ed. You know, we had an incredible conversation already this weekend.
Yeah.
Which obviously it wasn't meant to be recorded. However, and I recorded it here, I don't know that we can recreate that right now as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes those moments, like, they're there in the moment. And
piercing.
Yeah, and I once started a podcast with a buddy because we had, after the show, like, just this amazing conversation that was so, like, just real.
Yeah.
And from that, I was like, we need to do a podcast and have these conversations.
Yeah.
And we proceeded to do like a whole year and a half of doing these podcasts and never had a conversation like that.
Yeah.
We finally did one
Yeah.
night, but it was literally a year and a half into doing it. And
Yeah.
so I only say that because that was very, for me, an impactful conversation yesterday.
Well, you know, it's one of those things to where it's almost like when you're seeing someone eye to eye, but you're seeing them just not at surface level, which I don't think a lot of people care enough or haven't experienced enough the true depth of a conversation and especially from an individual that you know they're laying it all out to you in true transparency, because you both are vulnerable in that circumstance, and that's where all walls are down, all barriers, and that's where real impact and real relationship really takes root, I firmly believe. So I don't take any of those kind of situations for granted. I mean, we looked at the time and it was already time for the auction, you know? But it just went by like that. And I wouldn't trade that kind of stuff for the world, because that's when I don't do it a whole lot like that, because it doesn't happen a whole lot. You know, you can't be vulnerable like that a whole lot. And I really appreciate you being like that to allow me to be like that and to reciprocate that. But it takes two, right? It always takes two. And yeah, man, it's a moment that I'm always going to remember, no matter where our relationship goes from this.
Yeah, dude. Well, how did you get into all this? Like, how reptile world, like?
Oh, man. So the reptile world really came to fruition. So I got my degree in wildlife management. Hunting and fishing was always my outdoors, my background. Since I was a wee, couldn't even walk. My dad had me out in the woods. But once high school came, I knew I wanted to do something with my life that had to do with the outdoors. So it was more geared towards outdoors. You know, I still grew up, catching animals, lizards and snakes, and keeping them at home. Turtles, things like that. I'm a turtle buff. Like, bar none. If anyone really knows me, they know what I'm known for, but it all stems from turtles. And then I knew I wanted to do something with my life, because I got a full ride to go to like some liberal arts school, but I was like, you know what? Everyone kind of goes with the flow in that kind of scenario, because you're in high school and you're graduating, and they're like, oh, it's the first thing that comes around. But I just knew that my life had a purpose between some kind of outdoors, and I didn't know what. So I got my degree in wildlife management down in Southern Ohio, and after that, so I was very specific in why I went for wildlife management, is because instead of doing a real niche, like biology or like fish or something like that, I went for everything. I got a well-rounded background in dendro, trees, ornithology, birds, ichthyology with fish, mammals. I did it all. And I did that purposefully, intentionally, because I knew it gave me a little bit more well-roundedness. What I really wanted to fine-tune it with my life. So when I graduated, I didn't box myself into one thing, right? And I ended up doing a lot of volunteer work with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services and things like that. And I will so to backtrack. At the tail end of probably around high school, my introduction to actually the reptile community was through my first reptile shows. So I was in high school and I didn't even know what they were, right? And the reason why I knew what they were was because when I was 5 years old, so I haven't actually brought this up for a long time. When I was 5 years old, my dad was more outdoors, right? Well, my dad's friend, it was always like such a treat when my dad would take me over to his friend's house, because I'm talking about I was 5 years old, so you're talking about 1995, and so back in the day still, right? Well, he was a keeper, reptiles, right? So when we go to his house, this dude had caimans, alligators in his basement, but like not just like weirdly, but like relationshiply. Like he can stand in the middle of them, hunker down, and put both of his hands right on top of their foreheads. Like he was very intentional in relationship with his animals. He had everything, right? I mean, but the thing that got me into what I am in now, specifically diamondback terrapins, is I always remember till this day, he had this monster. It couldn't have been more than 200-300 gallon, nice tank, just display in his whole entire living room, dining room. And he had a trio of pure snow white diamondback terrapins, or innate diamondback terrapins, that were just mesmerizing. You're talking about a little kid and you see a ghost, like seeing a ghost, all spotless, top-notch quality, just right there on display. So my love for diamondback terrapins specifically stems since 5 years old. Now, I've been working with them for about 13, 14 years now, breeding them and keeping them. But man, like that's where my fine-tuned niche of the reptile community really came. It was rooted before I knew it was, right? So by the time I was in high school and I was able to get out more and do stuff, that's when I got introduced to the reptile shows. And back then, at least in Ohio, it was really kind of hole in the wall. So it was kind of still really sketchy. You go in, I'm like, but it was so crazy because you're going in. This is the one place where you can go in and it's like you go to a zoo, but you're like, they're all laid out on a table. Like, oh my goodness, I can see there's just so much stuff that you can't take in. But obviously, that's where I started getting some of the turtles and getting just about every turtle you can imagine. I've worked with all the different subspecies and stuff like that. But then, fast forward to graduating high school, that's when I really knew I wanted to dial it in more and work with diamondback terrapins. So I've been working with diamondback terrapins since I graduated college, when I was back in 2011. So that's kind of was my original introduction to the reptile community industry. Now, I didn't know about all this that we're at show-wise, that this magnitude was ever existed. That still actually took some time because I was never in a circuit and all that kind of stuff with doing shows and everything like that. I just kind of did my own thing, man.
So how long ago did the show thing, like a big show, like this come into your...
I would say big shows really came about. So when I graduated college, I moved probably about 2 years after this transformation with my brand. I moved down to Florida back in 2013. So I was down there for about 12 years. But during that time, that was when it was in Daytona and Orlando. I think in Orlando, when they had the big reptile show. That's when I was like, when you're in Florida, you're just like, they put stuff out there, like to where it's known, like, right? So that was my first big introduction to like big show magnitude of like, okay, this isn't, because like I said, going back, I only knew about like a whole little hole in the wall stuff, so when I seen it to that magnitude, it looked just mesmerizing, but also from a fact of like I was more mature and kind of knew what I was doing, or at least what I loved, to the point where like I seen there was opportunity, and like this is so much bigger than just like keeping animals. And then I'm a relationship kind of guy, so I really was intricate on just talking to people. specifically, I would say I really, one of the guys that really helped me to know there was a bigger spectrum is Ryan McVeigh. He's a big guy that really opened my eyes to a lot of the industry and the people and relationships. But before that, even, I was working with Diamondback therapists for a while.
How'd you meet Ryan?
At one of the shows. So, I mean, it's crazy because out of all the people I've talked to or tried to just kind of pick their brain, he was the only one that looked like he cared. And he showed that by sitting there with me and my wife for, oh my goodness, I don't want to say an hour, but it felt like an hour, and just would talk. And just, it was like, that's why whenever when someone comes to me or talks to me, or just whether it's in person or not, I never take it for granted, because it's one other person that I see myself in, or potential, whether it's a kid or adult alike, it doesn't matter. I take relationship and communication at the highest regard,
Yeah, I can see that. And even though when you were talking, I saw a little bit of Ryan in you, like some of the little. It was interesting because I've talked with Ryan a lot, and so it's interesting. I saw a couple of those things, like when he's talking, like he does that little thing that you did too. It was interesting.
What was that?
It's just kind of like a smile, like talking and then like looking at you and just like a little smile, like you listening? Because I'm talking to you.
He's got
listening?
that little yeah.
You listening,
yep,
right?
Now I got you now. I was like, what are you talking about now? So I was like, oh, great. Told myself a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it, and to go to a little bit deeper on that level, now I say when Ryan came to play, I was still involved in a community, but I was involved in like the turtle kind of community. And the thing about the turtle community, I'm like telling myself it doesn't matter. We like to kind of stay in our own like box, to where like turtle nerds, like we kind of stick together. Like we don't venture out a whole lot, because a lot of us are kind of like, we're just not out there a lot, right?
You realize how many little like turtle analogies you just dropped in those sentences.
Yeah.
So in a little box, we don't like to venture out.
Yeah, no.
Our heads outside of our shell.
No, seriously, no, I'm telling you, that's kind of how it is. But so it's like, but I don't. But when I talked to him, like I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much bigger. And I can replicate that when I told you when I was before I got saved and when I got saved. It was the same concept of like, wow, this is what I love to do. I got this whole new life. I love doing this. But then the ceiling broke, and it was like endless when I realized like this is so much beyond what I'm just currently doing. Like I love what I do. I'm going to continue, and nothing's going to stop me. But I just love people so much, and especially differences and different kind of types of people, that I don't care whether you're into ball pythons or, inverts or, big whatever monitors. Like, I was like, man, like I want to get to meet you and know you a little bit, and especially get to know about the animal. Because one thing I've been always big on, to where, even when I do my reptile educational programs, is I don't just research. My thing is that I find someone that's willing to invest in what they've already invested in, whether it be 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So when you see me have 3 giant alligator snapper turtles, over 100 pounds, that's not just me just like being careless or that I have. It's a blessing that I even had the opportunity. But I locked arms, and I had a mentor that's been working with me for already 40 years. You can't just Google and research how to take care of and keep an alligator snapper turtle that size. Just like, some of you guys, like Mike Stevani, and just so many names I can drop that I'm like, man, like, how do you do this? Or how do you care for this? Like, it's a humility that, like, teach me. Because you've pioneered, you've paved the way. Like, I don't want to research and ask all these other people. Like, I'm very specific, and however I'm led to certain people would be like, hey, how do you do this? I want to learn, teach me. Because those are things that it's no different than almost reading a book. There's a reason why all these people have done and wrote things to where sometimes you don't, if you just take that time and that investment to look a little bit deeper, the thing's already laid out. It's all there, You just gotta be willing to invest the time to be curious enough to look for it, and it takes a lot, especially when you're dealing with people. Like, a lot of people don't, seem a little iffy, certain conversations and stuff like that. But that's why it also takes the right people. It takes two, right? Me and you can't be doing this thing if it was just one-sided. It takes two. And that's why I'm all about timing and the right people, to where it's like, hey, whether someone has the time to talk or not, that's great. Well, no big deal. Because there's time for everything. It's always the right person. So I never take, hey, like a hi, bye, anything personal, offense, all that other stuff, that doesn't mean nothing to me. I'm all, hey, however it works out,
Time for everything, man.
Yeah.
Ecclesiastes.
Right? No, for real. And everything else always works out for the greater good. Like, it's not a coincidence that I was even in a time of my life just in the past 6 months that we and my family wanted to get out of. I wanted to get out of the grind of just a day job. And I say day job because it was a normal job, but I was doing second shift. I was tired of the grind like that. Me and my wife split shift, but I told God, I was like, man, like, if I get into anything, it has to make an impact. It has to mean purpose. It has to, and he knew that, and I was okay with waiting. And I've been waiting for my whole life, of my whole career. It's not a coincidence now that I have, between my educational programs, my breeding, the relationships I've been building and establishing, that it all now comes full circle, now getting to work for Redline Shipping, and now being here, and having this kind of opportunity. Like, it's mind-blowing to where, like, now I get to now even meet more people and more connections and more relationships because, I'm a breeder myself. So, like, I know when I'm taking care of someone's package, I'd be like, I know it's your business, or it's your livelihood, or it's your animal. Like, I take it in the highest regard, not just from over the phone or email. So I hopefully, if anyone's ever, I've talked to them or emailed me or had any kind of mutual kind of connect or relationship or communication, that they hopefully see that. And that's what I want to replicate, because I believe that's what Robin replicates and has replicated, within just a short time that he started this, and now how big it's grown. So,
yeah, man. It's awesome, dude.
Keep staring at me.
No, I'm just listening. Sorry, I look.
Your eyes are kind of like glowing, so I'm like.
It's all these lights.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not used to all this, so by the way, so yeah. This is fancy.
Yeah,
so.
No, you're doing good. You did great, bro.
Yeah, man.
It's awesome. You had some good stuff. They're very intentional, and like what you were saying was real about like how intentional you are about conversation and relationships, and like it's there. You can feel that it's like your words are weighted. It's not just like fluff. You're not just saying stuff. There's like a lot of meaning behind what you're saying. It's very intentional.
And I think now, since Brian Barczyk passing, I've went back, because I've met him, and and I was actually gonna one time work for him when we moved back up from Florida, because my wife's over not only an hour away from where they are. But it opened up the door to be able to kind of talk to him and get to know him a little bit, but like I didn't know a whole lot about him, like some of you guys, right? So before he even passed, like I dug deep in a lot of podcasts and stuff like that to really get to know who he really was. And there was just one thing that always stood out to me. Obviously, what stood out to most people is that no matter how big he got or who he was, he never saw himself as that, because he would always take such an intentional time for each individual person. I mean, the numerous times I heard people mention that he just took the time to talk to me. You're saying one person was able to make this kind of impact just from that? Now, granted, he got so blessed, and he had a purpose behind his life, because look what he was able to leave a legacy for. But that's one person. We all have that potential. We can all. And I think that's what Brian really wanted to replicate. And I believe he did, especially in the future generations. And we won't see that kind of fruit come up for a little while. But we see the seeds. We just need to be faithful also in the watering while he's gone.
Amen.
Oh. Appreciate you, brother.
I appreciate you too, man. Thanks for taking a moment to sit down with me and do this.
Yeah, it's an honor and privilege, man.
Anything you want to get out there before we go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that, I think it was kind of goes back to, when we had church this morning, is I think we all I think this Tinley, and I haven't been a part of Tinley, like this is only my second Tinley, right? But it doesn't take you having to go for 10 years to realize that something was probably different this Tinley with Brian, that it felt like, even from I have the comparison from last October, that there was a lot more intentionality and people just taking time for each other. That I think, we can all get caught up and wrapped up in just this is what we do in the circuit and we just kind of do our own thing. But I think, one thing now, looking forward now, I get to go to these a lot more with Redline and what I do, and is that just be very intentional. I said if that's one word of advice and that I can give and also, receive myself, is just being intentional with people, because it matters. It really matters, and you don't have to see it at that moment to know that it does, because our industry depends on it. Our industry depends on not just US Arc grinding themselves or Redline doing their part. It takes all of us doing our part. Forget the competition. Forget all the other garbage and drama. If there's one thing that a passing should make you realize, is that how quick something can come and go. So take every day, every show, and especially when you're at home and working your business, when it's behind the scenes, the daily grind, when no one sees it. Take even those, with intentionality. So.
Thank you guys for watching. Gosh, that was a cool one. I love doing these and just talking to folks, and I love mostly to listen and be inspired by other people while we're doing it. And hopefully you guys are inspired as well. Ed's words were very inspiring for me, so thank you guys for watching. Hope you got something meaningful from that, and we'll see you next week right back here on Redline Report. Until then, y'all take care. Gomer pile. That's a nice pile. I love that he didn't stop me from walking away with a handful of it.
All right.
And he just let me come back of my own free will. Dang it. I wish my free will made me steal it. No, just kidding.
So crisp. Man.
The money or the audio?
Both.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's not much better, man. It doesn't get much better than this.
Yeah.
Especially at Tinley.
We're
2024.
No. Dang it, Jeremy Turgeon. What's up, Ed?
Oh, man. What isn't up anymore, man?
You're going to want to be... These mics... The great thing about these mics...
Right next to them.
Yeah. They're
Gotcha.
very quiet, so they
Cool.
won't pick up a bunch of background audio, but that means we need to be, on them.
You got it. On it.